Well, good morning, everyone. This is Patrick at Qdabra, and really happy to have you here in our second training of the year for 2020. We did the training in April, and I think some of you were there for that training. This training, I'm happy to say, we've done a completely new solution. We've got a lot of new content. It is the largest delta from training to training I think that we've ever had. And part of the reason is that during the pandemic, we've been innovating. We've been doing new techniques and tools and solutions for you, and you'll see all those in the class this week. The other reason is that Joanne and Kirby and Yesha have been very creative and have built a solution using FormsViewer that actually you should have already received access to, which is this tool that we're using to share the training content with you. And we're going to do a demo of that shortly. But before we get started, let's do a quick introduction. Joanne, can you go to the next slide, please? So our goals with FormsViewer are to help you minimally move to the future. In other words, migrating your existing forms without having to rebuild them from scratch, retain that investment. In the training, we want to show that. That's the number one thing we always want to show you is here's how easy it is to take those existing forms and move them to the cloud, move them to FormsViewer on-prem with minimal effort. And then we also want to show these new things because InfoPath has been out there for a long time, and FormsViewer has been out now for 6 years. We want to show you the new patterns and techniques that augment what you're used to. So InfoPath has a bunch of features, but we've added to that. And FormsViewer, not only does it support the InfoPath features, but it supports those new patterns and techniques. So we want to show those. And we typically, when we move forms to FormsViewer, we always want to add some number of essential ingredients, dynamic data connections, the mobile-friendly responsive UI, and then there's other things too, like signature pads if you've got people who need to sign, and many other techniques and tools. So we'll talk about those in the training. We have new patterns and techniques this year that we've developed, in addition to the tried and true that we've been demoing for years now. The third bullet here, we're going to be giving you, hopefully some of you were able to download the content, step-by-step instructions. We've actually built new labs for this class, this fall class, and we've tested those. Not to say there might be a glitch here or there, but we've got those out. And then lastly, we want to show how to take the forms even further to the future with some of these mobile phone authentication techniques, task panes, and various other things that you've never seen before. That's next slide. So I'm really happy to introduce our trainers today. Joanne has been with us for over 11 years. I think we just hit 12, right, Joanne?
Right, yeah.
Way to go. And now we have a sort of a special question for the people who are listening. What do Joanne, Kirby, and Yesha all have in common? And if you already know the answer, then don't say anything. But if you want to chat, that's the quiz for this slide here is what do Joanne, Kirby, and Yesha all have in common? Kirby joined us 2.5 years ago, and she has been a rising star and is now our lead for support in Asia, so in Manila. She manages our team there. And Yesha is our latest new hire. She actually started two months ago, and Yesha's been coming up to speed very quickly. So does anyone know what Joanne, Kirby, and Yesha all have in common? Yes, Shane, you got it. They're all sisters. That's why they all look this. They have some features, but you guys are all different. Anyway, it's great to have you.
Kirby, can you still hear Patrick?
No, looks like Patrick lost his audio. Are you still there? Are you still there, Patrick?
Um, okay. I don't see him in the participants list. Okay. Anyway, let's just wait for him to rejoin the Zoom meeting. Okay. So in the meantime, I will continue the introduction. So just like Patrick mentioned, we are all sisters. I am Joanne Tandaan. I'm a software tester at Qdabra, and I've been in this company since 2008. I'm currently in the Philippines, and I used to live in Manila, but since COVID started, we moved in the southern part of Luzon where my family is. And for my hobby, when I'm not working, I love cooking, especially Filipino dishes, and I enjoy preparing meals for my family. So, Kirby, would you like to introduce yourself too?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Kirby Laborde, and I'm happy to see some familiar faces here and excited to meet our first time attendees of FormsViewer training. So, I started working for Qdabra in 2018, so I'm now in my second year, and this is my sixth FormsViewer training class. And recently, singing have become my hobby. So, that is singing classic children's song with my 8-month-old son. And it's my favorite way to interact with him because I noticed that it allows him to pay attention longer. And I just find it fun to entertain my son. So that's for my hobby. So yeah, I can't wait to share what we have prepared for you today. So thanks for joining.
Sorry about that. We have a storm in Seattle here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Patrick, we can hear you.
Thanks for filling in. So you're just doing the intro still. Did Yesha say something?
Yeah, Yesha is now the next one to introduce herself. Yeah.
So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Yesha. As mentioned by Patrick, I am a new hire at Qdabra and just started last month. And I am currently part of their forms design team. So, and for my hobbies, since we are currently stuck at home, I've been trying to improve my room with multiple makeover ideas. So, very excited for all of you to see the new features that we have. And thanks everyone for joining in.
Great. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide, Joanne. Okay, so we want to ask you why you're here. What is your name? Where are you on this wonderful planet that we live on? How many forms have you created? How long have you been using FormsViewer? And what do you hope to get out of the class? And we're going to be taking notes on this. Let's just start off from the top then. Alicia, you joined us, I think, at the very end, but are you able to go first? Looks like Alicia's still muted. Benjamin, you're next. Benjamin, can you go?
Can you hear me, Patrick?
Loud and clear.
Okay. My name is Benjamin, and I live in San Diego. I currently work at a children's hospital. I have created about 10 forms, but the main one that we have been using for over 11 years now, we are trying to migrate over to FormsViewer, but unfortunately that won't happen until next year. I'm hoping to get a jump start on learning FormsViewer, so I am prepared once we do roll it out early next year. And that's it.
Well, thank you so much for going first. And that's the capital expense form, right?
That is the capital budget form. Yes,
I'm just jogging my memory. Let's see, Alicia, if you get audio, let us know. If maybe you're busy, that's fine. Emma, do you want to go next?
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Ferry. I'm currently in Lenox, which is in Western Massachusetts, right by Albany, New York. I wouldn't really say I've created any forms. I have Frankensteined one form out of components of a lot of other ones. So
I didn't know that was a verb.
yeah, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants over here because I borrow from a lot of people. I actually work at Greylock Federal Credit Union with Nicole Foster, who you'll probably be hearing from in a little bit. We have been using FormsViewer, Nicole will correct me if I'm wrong, almost about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, if I'm remembering correctly. And
technically, Emma, but we haven't actually used a form yet. They're all just built.
okay. And I hope to get more familiar with forms. I unfortunately haven't been able to attend as much training as I'd like, but I want to become as familiar as Nicole is with them so that I can start building a lot of forms. So that's what I hope to get out of the class.
Thanks for the Halloween verbs, Frankenstein. I'm going to use that in the future. Let's see, maybe we should go to Nicole next.
Sure. My name is Nicole. I am also in Western Mass with Emma. We have created probably about 5 forms, all using different techniques with the FormsViewer. They are all ready to be implemented, but we haven't actually had our first migration to the new platform. So it's mainly just testing, I would suppose, at this point. And what we hope to get out of this class, that would be something that I haven't tried yet. Hopefully I have a new technique that I haven't used.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Wonderful to have you two with us from Massachusetts. Richard, do you have audio?
Can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, my name is Richard Sahadi, and I live in Plano, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. And I work at Prestonwood Baptist Church. It's a pretty big church. And I've created about 40 InfoPath forms on our on-premises site, and we're slowly migrating to SharePoint Online. I've got about 10 FormsViewer forms that I've created on SharePoint Online so far, and I still need to migrate the InfoPath forms from the on-prem to SharePoint Online and into FormsViewer there. And so what I'm hoping to get out of this training is to get some new features, maybe learn some CSS and some new techniques before we start migrating so they can be nice and pretty and impress people.
It's all about the look and feel.
Yeah.
Great to have you with us. And Alicia was here momentarily, and then she left. Is she not going to be able to make it because she works with you, right?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we do expect other people to join us. We did have quite a lot of people accept the invite last week. Maybe they're just busy today. We are recording, and so feel free to come and go as your schedule permits this week. And last but not least, Shane.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shane Harvey. I live in Milan, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. I have probably 10 to 15 forms under my belt. I've been using FormsViewer since it was in beta. What I really want to get out of this class is this has been like my 4th or 5th training classes. I always show up to try to get some of the new techniques, some skills to be able to develop new forms and see how they work for my company. So I'm looking forward to especially some of the CSS stuff moving forward and the approval workflows. I'm really excited about too.
It's great to hear. Thanks for being here, Shane. And I'm really, I want to just start off in saying that we do have, like I said at the beginning of the call, we have the biggest delta, I think, from training to training. We have the most new content in this training class that we've ever had before. Joanne, can you go to the next slide? I just want to say I was a bit, I think, surprised at this solution. So Joanne and Curvy and Yesha kept me in the dark until yesterday. They built this incredible new solution using FormsViewer that you can use to go through the content. So this is like a training content solution for the class. And this was all developed starting in September. And they kept it under wraps until literally yesterday. And I was just dumbfounded, I guess is the word, awestruck at how much work they put into it. Totally blown away. And with that, Joanne, maybe this is a great time to walk through this content and to go through the email you sent to everyone, how to download it, and maybe walk through that for everyone. And just so everyone knows, I'm going to be out for the rest of, I've got a family thing I need to attend in about 5 minutes. I'll be here for another 5 or 10 minutes if you want to chat me, but then I'll be back tomorrow, and you're in great hands. Kirby and Joanne have done the training many times before, and I look forward to getting your feedback at the end of today. If there's anything that we can improve, don't hesitate to let them know, and you can just email me as well. So Joanne?
Yep, Patrick, thank you so much. Okay, so this is the new course directory form that we are showcasing in this training. So if you were able to check my email earlier, there are 3 options for accessing this form. And we really encourage you to get access. So one of the options is to use the form's external link, and we've given you that link. It's an anonymous link. And so if I try to access this form in incognito mode, you'll see that I'll be presented with the authie section here. So if you choose option 1, what you need to do is just sign up if it's your first time registering. But I believe some have already tried to register, as I was checking the users list earlier. So to register, you just need to add your information here.
One of the reasons why this is such a great solution is because it's actually showcasing many of the features that we've demoed in the past. This is not new. These aren't new features for this class, but the form itself, the solution does showcase external authentication, and you don't need to have auth. You can use SMS text too. It also showcases, of course, the this new feature that we did. This is actually going to be in the class, right, Joanne? This feature to automatically type to the next field.
Yes, this is the text box character limit feature that we added in 5.2. So you're already seeing it here. So just enter the code that's in my authie. But like Patrick said, you don't need to have authie installed. You can receive the code via text. Just click on the text me the code option there, and you'll receive the code using SMS.
Now this Joanne just totally blew me away. I mean, in addition to all the other cool stuff that's in this solution, this ability that Yesha, I think, brought up, Yesha has taped all these videos for you to look at. So if you're wondering what a feature is, these new features in 5.2, you can just click on the clip.
Yep.
What did she use for the video? Is it, so we're seeing the video right now, right? She's clicking on it, and
right.
There's no audio, right? It's just a visual?
Yeah, no audio. It's a GIF, a GIF clip. And we use LiceCap to capture the short clip. So it's very easy. We just thought to add the clips here if you want to see where that feature is in FormsViewer. But we're going to demo it in actual here in training. But if you'd like to see them later, you can click on the button.
It's kind of like a reminder of, well, what was this thing? It's like you can go back to it and you can take a quick look, right, to remember. Is that kind of what you're thinking, is to get the demo first and then this is kind of a reference, right?
Yeah, sort of like if they want to remember what that is, something like that. Yeah.
Cool.
And yeah, so these are the features that we've added in 5.2. So we've listed that here, but these are just one of those features that we've chosen to display here. So I'm gonna show you those features in a moment, but let me close out that window. So if it's your first time accessing the form, this is what you're gonna see. It's actually a card type display. So the day section are displayed in a card style column. And it's using one of the...
Joanne, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you go back to that clip thing again? I just wanted, I don't know if people realize this, but this is actually an overlay, right? This is not a new view, right?
Yes, this is an overlay, and I'm just using a
so this, because you can see the bottom is bleeding through slightly. There's like an opacity of, I don't know what it is, but I can see the cards in the background. And for those of you who haven't seen, this is a very cool feature that we have had in previous training. And I think we have a lab in this class as well, but this is one of the most popular features. Highly recommend it. You don't have to have the overlay go left to right, complete covering the screen. You can have it just as like a modal pop-up as well. But I just wanted to kind of call that out since people may not have seen this before. And Joanne, I'm going to take off now, but I really good luck with the training today, and I'll look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Patrick. Okay. So yeah, so this is an overlay, and I'm using an opacity here in my CSS, so you can see through the background there, the back. So, so yeah, so each day you have a section here. So this is like a preview of what you're gonna see for this training. So you can click a lab, and it will show another overlay that displays or shows you the description for that lab. So you have the description here, the value proposition, benefits of using this feature, what you'll need. So you have a download button here. We've provided that already. So you have a central location for downloading all of the lab contents. So if you click download, it will direct you to a Hightail space. And you can download the zip file here. And the package already includes the starter form, the documentation, and as well as the end form for the lab and any other related files. We've already included that in the Hightail link. So yeah, so you can download that here. And you can also see what you'll learn section here. That's really helpful if you like to familiarize yourself on the topics. So these are the topics we're going to discuss for day one. We have 4 labs for day one. So is everybody able to access the course directory form? If not, please let us know. You can chat if you encounter any issues accessing it. In my email, I mentioned that you can also deploy the form in your own site, and we've done that also. We've verified that we can deploy this form to a different site. So this is a different tenant site where we deploy that course directory form. So what you'll need to do is download the link to the XSN and STP. So you'll get the labs STP and upload that in the list template gallery, and then go to your site contents and create an app. Click new app. And because the labs list is already available here in this tenant, I can just select that labs list and create that. And then that's all that is needed to for this course directory form to work. So the next thing you'll do is just upload the FormsViewer, the XSN to FormsViewer. So grab the XSN and upload it to your FormsViewer, and just verify that you can access all of the lab description, and the download buttons are enabled for day one. If you see the download buttons disabled, that means that the package is not yet available. Yeah. So as you can see, I was able to display the description here because the labs list is deployed in this tenant side. So that is option 2. You can deploy the form to your own site if you don't want to authenticate using Authy or SMS. So another option is to just directly access the hightail links that we provided. So if you don't use SharePoint, so that is just another option. Just directly access the hightail links and download the packages from here. Okay, so let me just go back to just close out the tabs here. So many tabs. Let's just reopen that. Okay, so getting back to the what's new features for FormsViewer 5.2, I'm going to go over this features one by one. So first, we are now providing the anonymous toggle checkbox in the templates page. So if you have the update already, you can see the checkbox in the upload template page. It's called Allow Anonymous Users. And if I check this box and click Update, the anonymous button here will be enabled. And the only difference with these buttons is that this anonymous button has the FV and untrue parameter. So that will allow any user to access the form externally. So in this case, we're using Authy to authenticate external users using the anonymous mode. So if I disable that and refresh this, you'll see that I get this message that I don't have permission to access this page. So that is one another security level that you're adding to your form, is by not allowing anonymous users access here. So that is one feature. Another is the FV extension support for list forms. So let me go back to my site here. So if you're already familiar with the FV Extensions app, you can always access it in Pages and the site page you created for the FV Extensions app. Previously, only libraries are supported in this FormsViewer extensions. But now we have a list option here, so you can now select a SharePoint list and associate that list to your FormsViewer template. So if you select this columns here and indicate your FormsViewer URL here and indicate your template here and apply changes, those title links will be converted to FormsViewer links. So let me show you one of my SharePoint lists here that is making use of that extensions app. So first of all, the new item is this button here at the top. So there's a FormsViewer button here that acts as a new item. So if you click that, it will open a blank form for you, a blank list form. And then the links here will open the item in FormsViewer. Okay, then, so that's the support for list forms and FE extensions. The next feature that we added in 5.2 is attachments in SharePoint list. And that's what you're seeing here actually. You can use the attachments control now to add an attachment to a list form. Oh, so saying it's already existing here, so I can delete that and reselect another of the same file that there. So I'll submit, and it will convert that attachment to a link like that, and I can click on that to open that attachment or download. Yeah, so yeah, so previously that is not supported, but in 5.2 that feature is now added. So next is the file attachment control multi-drop support. So this feature is actually available since 2019, but we also want to show you how that works. Because it's really a cool feature where you can drop multiple attachments to a file control. So I'm using a command called register multi-drop for this repeating file control here, and just looking for docs to drop. So for example, if I select multiple documents and drop that there, so it will automatically insert multiple rows and add the attachments here. So it's really a cool feature, and especially if you're working with a lot of attachments in your forms. So this register multi-drop command comes in handy because it allows you to drop multiple attachments just like that. So that's one. Another is the highlight and validation errors. So it's this one form here. So this is actually going to be discussed by Yesha in Lab 3. For those of you who are familiar with get errors, it's a command in Q rules. We've extended that command to allow highlighting for fields that have validation errors. So as you can see, the required fields here are highlighted in pink. And if you are used to adding formatting rules in InfoPath to add this highlight, you no longer need to do that. Just use get errors and it will take care of the validation highlight for you. So if I enter some data here, it will detect the value I entered and will remove that highlight. So that's really cool. And it also displays the errors here, and Yesha will talk about this later, so watch out for that lab. Okay, so that is the highlight for validation errors. Text box character limit. So this is the auth digit code here. It's actually a text box which is limited to 1 digit only. So if you've already entered 1 digit here and it detected that it reached that limit, it will move to the next field right away. So that's what you're seeing in the auth verification code there. So it's a good addition to your form, especially if you're using this kind of solution and any other form that requires text or text box character limit. You can use this technique. So that's also added in FormsViewer 5.2. So those are the new features that we'd like to let you know. And we've also included some of the new patterns and techniques in this training. So we've added the techniques that we've webinared in the past, like the flex task pane, floating labels, overlays, open links via button. Actually, this training form is making use of that technique already. As you can see, this download button here is opening a URL in a new tab. And previously that is not supported in FormsViewer, but now you can do that using a button click. So I'll show you that in day 4. So there's a lot of cool feature to watch out for this training. And also, I'd like to show you that this training form is completely mobilized. So if I use Chrome's DevTools to select a different mobile device, so if you're using mobile, you can also access the form. So this is iPhone. Yeah, so I'm using CSS to stack up the day section like this. Depends on the screen size. I select iPad, so it's displaying nicely like that. So yeah, so you want to access the form in mobile, that is possible too. Okay, so let me go back to the slide here. I hope everyone is able to access the course directory form. If not, please let us know and we'll assist you. Okay, so next slide.
All right, so here are the latest and greatest features in FormsViewer today. Some of them are already mentioned by Joanne. So we have the improved validation feature, and we also have new features powered by FormsViewer together with CSS and JavaScript, like the responsive forms, floating labels, task panes, debug slider, and the modal and overlay. And for those of you who have attended our webinars, we have shown these features, but we didn't really show in detail how to add them to your form. So in this training, we're going to show you the step-by-step process, how to implement them. And the other latest features that are available in FormsViewer are the approval links in email. So this feature offers a way to automatically approve and reject forms within the email itself. So that way the approver no longer need to access the form. We also have the auto logout form users. So this is actually a reusable template part that detects whether a user is inactive, and it will automatically log out the user from using the form. So open links via button, this is already discussed and showed by Joanne. So in InfoPath, there's no way to open a link upon click of a button by default. So FormsViewer made that possible. And next is the auto refresh queries. So this is handy when you have dashboards or queries that you want to automatically run in a specific time interval. Next is the concatenate repeating items. This is actually an alternative for the double eval infopath function, which we're going to tackle in day 4. And last but not least, the limit text box characters and auto run rules. This feature is recently added in FormsViewer. It now supports this text box property, and we'll show you one scenario when you could use that functionality in day 4 as well.
So the training requirements, we assume that you already have the FormsViewer app installed. Either you've installed it using SharePoint Online or on-prem. And you also need to be a site collection admin because you need to be an admin to manage templates. So you need to have that permission. And we're using Zoom for this training, so you can connect via PC or mobile. Yeah, so another requirement is the course directory form access, and I'm giving you the link to that and the 3 options for on how you can access the form. So those are the simple requirements for this training. Next. So for day 1, we are going to discuss the key steps to using the Qdabra forms. We have 4 labs for this day. So for lab 1, we're going to discuss how to add the dynamic data connection XTP, and Kirby will demo that to you. Then lab 2 is about adding the user profile to your form. Then we'll have a 10-minute break, and then we'll move on to the validation feature that we showed you earlier, the highlighting part for validation errors. And Yesha will continue on that lab. And then for the last lab, I'm going to discuss how you can configure your forms to submit to DBXL using an XTP. So those are the 4 topics that we're going to discuss in this day 1. So if you're ready, we can now proceed with the demo.
Hi, Joanne. I believe you have to make me as a presenter or stop sharing so I can.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. Let me know if you can now see my screen.
Yes, can see your
All right.
screen.
Thank you. So now I am in the course directory. So for lab 1, we're going to show you how you can make your data connections dynamic. So you may ask, in what scenario would you need to do that? Well, let's say you have a form that needs to be migrated from one site to another where you've got the same library and lists. It's easy to repoint 1 or 2 data connections, but what if your form has 10 or more data connections? You can imagine the hassle it would give you to change all of those data connections and repoint them to the site where you'll migrate the form. Let's say from dev site to a test site, and then imagine that you'll redo it later from your test site to your production site. So wouldn't it be nice if your form has the ability to auto-detect the site where it's uploaded to and automatically point those data connections to that site? So I'm going to show you how you can actually add that feature to your form to save you time in migrating forms with multiple data connections. So if you haven't done already, download the package here in the course directory by clicking the download button here. And I've already done that earlier, so I now have the package in my local folder. And let's start opening the starter form. And we're going to first add the XTP, which is this one, the dynamic thesis XTP. This is actually a reusable template part that can be reused over and over again in any of your forms that needs this specific feature. So let's open the starter form here in InfoPath Designer. And in this control section here, click the arrow button there and click add or remove custom controls to add the XTP. Click add and select the default one, which is template part. Click next, browse for our template part, which is in here. Click finish and close. And then once that's done, you're going to see that it's now added here under the custom section. So to add that to the form canvas, let's put our cursor at the bottom of our form and select the newly added XTP. There we go. So as you can see here, a section has been added in our form canvas where all of the instructions are included on how to configure the XTP. And you're also going to see that an XTP logic secondary data source is also added where rules are located that will make our data connections dynamic. So sample here, we have the run onload node here where you can see all of these rules. But of course, we still need to do a quick configuration in the XTP rules in order for this feature to work. So the next thing that we need to do is inject Q rules, but I've already done that. As you can see, I have here the Qdabra rules secondary data source. But in case you'd like to know how to inject Q rules to your forms, this is how you can do it in FormsViewer. So let me just go back to my folder here, and I have here a simple form without Q rules. So let's open that real quick. And it's actually just a blank form without any fields or any secondary data sources. So let's open that in FormsViewer, upload that form, click upload a new template, and let's drag this and drop it here. Click upload. And once that's uploaded, you're going to see that there's a design button here. Click that, and this will direct you to the Forms Designer. And under the Command Builder tab, you're going to see that there's an Inject Q rules button here. So click on that, and it will automatically inject the Q rules in your form. So easy, right? So now if we go back to the template page here and download the form, the same form, the simple form, you're going to see that the Qdabra rules data connection is now added to the form. So that's how easy it is to inject Q rules in your forms by using FormsViewer. So next is the next thing that we need to do. Let's go back to our starter form here. Next thing that we need to do is run the dynamic data connection rules on form load because we want the changing of the data connections to happen when the form loads on open. So to do this, we will add an action in finish loading node of the Qdabra rules. This finish loading node actually acts as the same as the form load in InfoPath if you've already used this. So, and let's create a new here that will set the run onload node of the XTP logic to any value. So let's go to the XTP logic secondary data source, go to actions group, and then click on this run onload node. Then give it any value. Let's give it a value go. So we can trigger the rules within that node. So if the form loads, so let's go to the XTP logic. If the form loads, all of these rules in here under the run onload node will be executed. So you'll see here we have the determine SharePoint URL rule. So in here, you'll see that we've used our Q rules command or Qdabra rules command called get input parameter. So this command actually retrieves the current site where the form is uploaded to. So it retrieves the value of the SP host URL parameter in the FormsViewer URL. So let's try to open a sample form in FormsViewer. So I have here the course directory. So let's use the URL of that form. And I'm just going to paste that in one note. And as you can see here, we have the SP host URL parameter And if we try to copy that and paste it in a URL decoder here, I have it in here, it will remove all of those percentages, so you can clearly see the actual URL where the form is uploaded to. So that is the kdabrasharepoint.com/training/1020. So that is how we dynamically point the data connections to the new site. So the XTP uses temporary placeholders for QRules nodes, specifically the command, result, success, and error nodes. So the next thing that we need to do is repoint those nodes to the actual Qdabra rules nodes. So to do that, let's go to the temp command node here, and you'll see the set QRules edit rule. For the first action, replace the stop node to point to the command node of Qdabra rules. Click that and click OK. Next is for the temp result, we're going to add the actual Qdabra rules result node in here. So let's click the function button there, insert our field, go to the Qdabra rules secondary data source, click result. Same steps for the temp success. We're gonna put in here the success node. And lastly, the error node. All right, so that's done. So there are two data connections that we need to convert to be dynamic in this sample form that we have. So one is the submit to library data connection, and the other is the get user profile by name. So if you look closely, the submit data connection points to the subsite training/0420/EOD report. So that is our old training site there. And also the get user profile by name is also pointing to that same subsite, the 0420. And we want to point this form to our new site here, which is the training/1020. So to do that, let's go back to our starter form. And in the XTP logic, again, data connection, go to change connection node under the actions group here. And you'll see that there are disabled rules in here. So we need to enable the submit to library connection and also the get user profile by name. But if you're going to, let's say, apply this XTP to any of your forms and you have, like, for example, a submit to SharePoint list mapping there, you have to enable this, and also the rest, like the query library, or if you're querying list in your form. So you have to enable those as well. But for this case, we just need to enable the submit to library and also the get user profile by name. So for their corresponding nodes in here, we're going to go to the submit libraries node. And in here, in this rule here called SharePoint library submit, we're going to add the actual data connection name for our submit. So you'll see here that it says enter submit to library data connection name. And that is SharePoint library submit. So let's enter that. SharePoint library submit. And next is adding the library name. So our library name is here in our new site called EOD report. So that's our library name. Let's add that here. And next is go to the get user profile by name node. In this rule here called get user profile by name, we're going to select this. And since we have already have this name as our as the name of our get user profile by name, then we no longer need to update this. But if your get user profile by name data connection in your own form has a different name, then you have to change that in here. All right. So once that's done, let's delete this section here because we no longer need it. section of the XTP and also this group in here that was auto-created after adding the XTP. So let's just delete that and save our form. Let's just add 2 here. And then we're going to verify if our form is now pointing to our new site. So let's go to the Manage Templates in FormsViewer. In here, I'm going to click this one, and I'm going to upload the one that we just updated. Click Update, and then click Upload anyway. All right, so open the form. And all right, so here's our form. But how are we going to verify that our links are dynamically pointing now to our new site? So we have added a debug slider here that you can toggle. So you'll see all of the Kuros commands that were executed upon onload of the form. So here you'll see that the get input parameter was executed and it got the value of the SPO's URL, which is our new site, the Qdabra.sharepoint.com/training/1020. And same thing for our SharePoint library submit and also the get user profile by name. It's now pointing to our new site here. So the last thing that we need to do in order to verify that it's now pointing to the correct site is to test the submission of the form. So let's add some random text in here. So date 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for example. Task in progress. This is a sample EOD report. All right, let's submit. Let's try to submit. All right, so it looks like the form is successfully submitted. So let's see if it's now in here in our library here. All right, so as you can see, this is the form that we just submitted a few seconds ago. So now if you want to apply this feature to your forms, some of you may get overwhelmed by all of the rules in the XTP and might get lost when you do it the first time, but it will get easier once you get the hang of it. So we are providing a PDF guide for you included in the package for you to follow. It's very straightforward. You'll soon realize that this technique is faster to implement than manually converting all your data connections. So I hope the instructions are clear to everyone. So that's it for lab 1. Joanne?
Okay, thank you, Kirby. So can you show the form again? Anyway, stop sharing.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll just share out. Okay, are you sharing, Kirby?
I'm no longer sharing my screen.
Okay. Well, thank you for that wonderful demo, Kirby. So this is the end form that she used. I just would like to mention that in the previous training, if you notice, we are always using the expense report form, but this time we chose a different form. This form is actually inspired by Basecamp, so it's called an end-of-day report. We noticed that most companies now allow their employees to work from home. I'm guessing many of you work from home now, so this is a way for allowing your employees to send out their end of day report, and they can also access this form externally if they don't have SharePoint access, you can give this form link to them an external access so they can authenticate using Authy or SMS text message. So I'd just like to briefly mention that we are giving this form for free. Yeah, so next is Yesha. She's going to discuss how you can load the user profiles here and also the picture. Okay, Yesha, you ready?
Okay, so let me just try and share my screen.
Stop sharing now.
Can you see my screen now? All right. So let's go back to the course directory, and there we go. So for the next lab, we are going to discuss the get user profile by name command. So this offers a way to retrieve SharePoint user profile data and display them in a form. So this is an efficient way wherein you don't have to fill up the fields regarding your own profile details, and we can instantly set the data retrieved from your SharePoint user profile information to your form. So I'm going to start off by showing you the end form of this lab. Um, there we go. So here is the end form of the get user profile by name. So once we open the form, as you can see, it instantly filled up my first name in the title of end of day report, my first name in this field, my last name, and even my picture. So this is the power of the get user profile by name. It can retrieve data from your SharePoint user information list, and we can use that data and display it in the form. So how do we apply and use the get user profile by name command? So let's try and open our starter form, which you can access through the package that we've included in the course directory. Just click download and you will be able to download the package of the get user profile by name. So I've already done that, and let's try to open the starter form. So for the get user profile by name, there are three things that we need to do as a prerequisite of the get user profile by name command. First thing to do is we need to add the get user profile by name data connection. So to do that, let's go to the data tab of your info path and click data connections. So in our starter form, the get user profile by name is already added. As you can see, the type is retrieve data. We've already added the correct web service, and the operation for this is the get user profile by name. And once that's done, it will create a data source, which you will see here in your data fields, um, called get user profile by name secondary data source. And we will be needing this later on for getting the data itself. So the second thing to check is if the get user profile by name command is applied and used in the form within the dynamic DC's XDP, which was implemented in the previous tab. So let's go and check the dynamic DC's secondary data source. And let me just quickly show you how the get user profile by name is implemented in the dynamic DCs. So let's try to expand the actions, the connections. Let me just show you the rules. And as you can see here at the end of the connections, we have here a node called get user profile by name. And let's click the data connection name. And at the last part of the action, this is where it is using the Qdabra rules command, wherein it is calling the get user profile by name and retrieving the data, the site user's data. So we've now checked that the get user profile by name is correctly implemented by the dynamic DCs. The third thing to check is to make sure that the get user profile by name is enabled in the dynamic thesis, which was actually performed earlier by Kirby in the previous lab. So let's go and check the change connections under the actions group folder. As you can see here, we have enabled already the get user profile by name uh, connection. So this will trigger and start to retrieve the data of the current user who opened the form. So again, let's take a summary. The three things that you need to check as a prerequisite of get user profile by name is first to add the data connection. Second is to check if it's correctly implemented in the dynamic thesis. And third is to check if the get user profile by name is enabled in the change connection of the dynamic thesis. So once that's done, let's now set our fields in the form with the data that we are going to retrieve from the get user profile by name. So let me go through our main data source. And let me just show you the fields that we instantly want to have values upon opening the form. So let's extend the employee information, and we are going to use the first name, the last name, and the picture. So these are the fields that we will set with the data that we are going to retrieve from the get user profile by name. So how are we going to set these fields with the data from the get user profile by name? Let's proceed with opening the form logic secondary data source. So let's click the drop down and go to form logic secondary data source, and let's expand the actions. And as you can see here, we already have a set current user action. Here is where we are going to add the actions to set the user's information. So let's try and create a new action here, and let's name this set current user. So once you've added a new action, let's click add here and set a field's value. In the fields, we will be selecting a placeholder from the set current user under the form logic secondary data source. So let's click the current first name, and in the value tab, this is where we will input uh, the value that we are going to retrieve from the get user profile by name. So to do that, we will select this FX button, insert fielder group, and then let's go look for the get user profile by name secondary data source. Now, this is where we can expand the data fields, and this is where we are going to get the values of the users information list. So let's try to expand this until you see the value tab, the value field. Here we go. And this just means that we are trying to get the value, but what type of value do we want? We want the first name. So let's try to filter the data of the value, and let's click the add button. And for the first drop down, let's select a fielder group. And under the same data source, which is the get user profile by name, and under the property data, the name should be equal to, let's type a text, first name. Let's click OK. Okay. Okay. All right. So you might be wondering, how did we find out what values can we retrieve from the get user profile by name? So let me just quickly show you the end form of our end of day report. And I've added here a hidden button, which is invisible. And I've um, input here the property data or the repeating date table of the get user profile by name. This is showing us the values that is retrieved by the get user profile by name. As you can see, it retrieved my first name, my last name, my picture, and even my work email, and so on and so forth. So these So when you try and drag and drop the property data from the GetUserProfileByName data source, you can see those values that was retrieved by the command. So now that we've set the first name, let's try and set the last name and the picture. So let's go back to the starter form. And let's add again in our set current user action, set a field's value, and let's just repeat the actions that we did earlier. So for the field, we will set it in our placeholder. So let's try and set the current last name, and then for the value which we will be getting from the get user profile by name data source, let's insert fielder group, and then let's go to our get user profile by name. Let's expand this until you see the value field. And let's filter this data because we only want to get the last name. So let's select a fielder group and select the name of the property data, and that name should be equals to the last name. Click OK. And again, we will be repeating those steps for the picture. So for the field, let's select the placeholder of the current picture. For the value, let's insert fielder group and let's go through the get user profile by name, expand this, and then let's filter the data to only get the picture value. So let's select the fielder group from the get user profile by name. The name should be equal to picture. All right. Now that we have set those into our placeholders, we would now want to set the values that we got from the get user profile by name to be displayed into our forms. So let's add a new action here, and let's call it set user details. So under this set user details, let's add and set a field's value and then run this actions. And then for the field, let's now select from our main data source because these are the fields that we are using to be displayed into in our forms. So let's select the first name field. And then for our value, we will be selecting the placeholder that we've just inputted the value of the get user profile by name. So let's select the current first name. Okay. And then we repeat those steps again for the last name and for the picture. So let's set the field's value, click field, and go to our main data source, expand our employee information, select the last name, and then for the value, let's select the FX button. Let's insert fielder group, and then under the form logic secondary data source, we will then unselect our current last name. And then one more time for our picture. So let's set a field's value. Let's go to our main data source. Let's select our picture field, and we will set this with a value from our set current user, our current picture. All right, so those are the steps that we need to set data into our fields with the data that we retrieve from the get user profile by name. The next thing to do is to trigger this set current user action. So we want this to be triggered and processed. So to do that, we will go to our Qdabra rules secondary data source. And let's go into our finished loading. And let's add here a new action. And let's just name this set current user. And then we want the set current user action to be triggered. So let's set the field's value. And then from the field, the set current user is placed in our form logic secondary data source. So expand the actions and select that action and just type in go. So this will trigger this action and process that. And one thing to remember that is very important is that you have to place the set current user after the run dynamic DCs. Why? Because the run dynamic DCs, as I mentioned earlier, will be the one to trigger the action and retrieve the data from your site users list. Now, after that's retrieved, that's only the time where we can set the user's data retrieved from the get user profile by name into the fields of our forms. So how easy are those steps? And once all of those steps are completed, the result of your form will be the end form of our get user profile by name. So as you can see, let's go back here. As you can see, upon opening the form, it will instantly display the current user's first name, last name, and picture. Again, this is not limited to only these values. You can also display the user's email, preferred name, and so on and so forth. So that's the end of the lab 2. Hopefully you'll be able to use this in your farm.
Can I ask a question? This
Yep.
is Richard. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi. I'm sorry if I missed this in the presentation, but so in this scenario, if the form is closed and someone else opens the form, will this information change, or is there like additional? Is there a rule or a condition that we need to add to where this information is going to be set just the first time the form is open and once it's saved?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
So
sense?
actually, yep. So for our get user profile by name, it's trying to get the current user. So once you've opened that, it will only check, okay, the profile of the SharePoint, the one that is logged in currently, and that's where it gets the data. So when I'm trying to open this, it will only show my data because I'm the one who's logged in. But if as you mentioned earlier, if someone tries to open it, so if Joanne tries to open it, the information that she will see is her own details. So
Yeah, I think that just to add to that, I think that it will only do that for blank forms, for new forms, but for existing forms, like Richard was asking, if you open an existing form, for example, in a SharePoint library, it will retain that information. We can add a form logic to not set the current user if the first name and last name is already filled out. So I think we can add that in the finish loading node. I think that answers your question, Richard.
I think so. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that question, Richard. That's really good. And I also would like to mention that the displaying of user picture is very seldom used. We don't normally use that, but we are showing that to you in this training. And I think that it's a good addition to your forms because it makes the form look more personalized. I don't know, what do you think? Can I get any comments on this technique here that Yasha showed you? I can already think of ways on how to place that picture. Maybe you can place a picture on the side beside the current username to show the currently logged in user, and in the header, something
I
like
like
that.
the look of it.
Yeah.
I think that like on a purchase order form, when you have all these people approving different things and they're trying to get an idea of who submitted the request and what they look like, and helps them familiarize themselves with what someone looks like that they didn't know who they were. So I kind of like it.
Yeah, thank you. And Yasha is showing, just showed you how to retrieve the SharePoint, the user photo from SharePoint site users list. But we also provide another way to retrieve the photo using Authy. So if you can open the template in anonymous mode, Yasha, can you do that? Go to the update template page and open the form in anonymous. Yeah, so Authy will show up here, and Yasha, can you click sign up first? Yeah, so Authy is enabled for this form as well, and as you can see in the last field, there's a picture, a base 64 option there where you can put a base 64 format of your picture. So we're also providing that option for you. It's base 64 because the reason is you can't query picture files externally. So SharePoint doesn't allow that. So we are using base 64 format of the picture and saving that to a list. So you'll be able to query the photos externally. But anyway, if you're using the SharePoint internally, you can always use the pictures from the user profiles or site users. And that's what Yasha just showed you. Okay, so she's now showing you how to convert your picture to base 64. And you can just Google any site that converts an image to base 64.
Yep. So as you can see, what I did, it can be you can do this online and convert your images to base 64. And once you've done that, where once you've done that, you just need to input the base 64 in the Authy um in the Authy field, and then from the Authy section, as mentioned by Joanne, that's where it will get retrieve the data for your picture and your first name and your last name. So let me stop sharing and hand this over to you, Joanne.
Okay, thank you so much, Yasha. All right, so we're done with the demos. So we're going to have a quick 10-minute break. And after 10 minutes, we'll continue with Lab 3, which is validation highlighting for errors. And then Lab 4, I'm going to do Lab 4 to show you how to configure your forms to submit to DBXL. So talk to you in 10 minutes. Thanks. Welcome back to day one of our training class. So before we proceed with lab 3, I just want to do a quick run through of the question earlier about displaying the photo externally. So I have opened the end form that Yasha showed you earlier. Um, and I'm going to sign up using Authy. Yasha, can you verify that you can hear me?
Yep,
Can you hear
loud and
me
clear,
okay?
Joanne.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So just entering my email address here. So this is just to show you how flexible this form is. Okay. Um, so this is the part where she was entering the base 64 value. Uh, and I found a site where you can easily convert your images to base 64. I'll just browse on my picture here. So this is the base 64 value. Just copy that, paste that here, click sign up. Okay, and Avi just sent me the code. So typing it here. Okay. Yeah, so as you can see, it is displaying my photo even if I'm accessing the form externally. It's because I've entered the base 64 value of my image when I signed up using Authy. And the base 64 value is stored in the users list. And it's basically querying that photo here and displaying as a picture file. So that's how you can, it's one option if your users are not or doesn't have access to SharePoint, you can give them anonymous access to this form. So that's what we're trying to explain to you earlier. So I'm going to pass the mic now to Yesha.
I have a quick question first.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Did you say that that's stored in a users list that you have? So that's stored on your SharePoint site?
Yes, currently, if you're using the external link that we sent you,
Mm-hmm.
when you registered, your info is stored in this users list. So as you can see, the base 64 value I put is here. I can see some of you already tried to register using the external link that we sent.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So I guess we can now proceed to lab 3. Yesha, are you ready?
Yep. So
Okay.
sharing my screen now. Let me know if you can see my screen. Okay. So for the lab tree, we are uh, going to talk about the add validation feature. So for this lab, we will show you how you can use the get errors command in the forms viewer to display the validation errors in your form. So what you learn in this lab is you will be executing required fields with validation rules, and you will also be able to display error details upon validation. So this was actually showed to you earlier by Joanne. And let me just show you again the end form of the add validation feature. So as you can see here, we now have our end of day report, And let's just leave the fields blank and click submit. So as you can see, the get errors command changed the formatting of the fields that has errors, and it is now highlighting the background color as pink. And it did not just change the formatting of the field, it is also displaying the error message details. So for example, the title field shows the message, please indicate your title. So that's what the new validation feature can do. And let's go ahead and achieve this with our starter form. So let's go and open our starter form, which again you can get from our from the package that we provided in our course directory. So the first thing that we need to do is to add the validation rules to the required field. So let's try and add it into our title field. And in our title field, let's um, create a new validation, and let's just name this validation. And now let's create a condition, and let's set this if the title is blank. So this just means that if this condition is satisfied, or if the title field is left blank, then this field will show an error. And we also want to indicate an error message. So let's input it in the screen tip, the message that you want to be displayed later on. So let's type here, please indicate your title. There we go. Now we've added a validation rule into our title field. Let's just repeat that process into our department field. Let's go ahead and add a new validation. Again, let's rename this validation and add a condition that if the department field is left blank or is blank, then it will show it as an error, and then the error message is please indicate your department. There we go. Now you would need to repeat these steps with the required fields that you want in your form. You can repeat it to the report date and so on and so forth. Once that's done, let's go ahead and add an error message field in our main data source. So in our main data source, let's go on and add a new field called error message. So the purpose of this field is that we will set here the result of the get errors command that we will trigger later on. So let's go ahead and create that. And then after you've created that, let's go to our submit button. And now let's try to add a run validation rule. So we want the run validation rule to be processed first before the submit process. So we will be adding the run validation rule at the topmost part of the submit button. So let's add here an action, and let's call it run validation. Now let's move this at the topmost part. There we go. Now, once that's done, in here we will be using the Qdabra rules. So let's add and set a field's value, and then in the field we will be using the Qdabra rules. So let's go to our Qdabra rules secondary data source, and let's click the command. And then in the value field, let's input uh, the the get errors command. So this is the default get errors command and its parameters. So this just means that if the validation rule of a field is met, then this will result to an error. So let's click OK. And after that, let's add a new action uh, and set a field's value. Now we've run the command, and now we want to set the result of that command. So for the field, we will then choose the error message field that we've created earlier. So let's click that. And for the value, um, we will go to our Qdabra rules secondary data source. Here we go. And then let's click result. And let's click OK. So once the run validation has been added, of course, we don't want the submit process to continue if there are existing errors. So we are going to add an action and name it stop if error exists. So let's create an action. Stop if error exists. So in here, um, we will then on create a condition, and let's say that if error message is not blank, meaning if there is an existing error, then this condition will be met. And let's add uh, a new action and set a field's value. Now we want this to stop, so um, let's go on with let's look for our form logic secondary data source and select the stop field, and let's just place this. Let's uh, indicate the value to go. And one thing to not forget is to check this checkbox, which is the don't run remaining rules if the condition of this rule is met. So meaning if there is an error if there is an error that is existing, the submit process, the remaining rules here will not be processed anymore. So after that, we will then add an error message display section. So after we've added that command, let's try and display the error messages that we want to be displayed. And by doing that, let's expand the controls and let's select the section. All right. So as you can see, it created instantly a new group, but we won't be needing that. So let's try to change its binding, and let's just select the main data source employee report. And then we will be deleting this group folder since we won't be needing it. All right. And in our section, we will then proceed on dragging and dropping our error message field. As you can remember, we the error message field has the result of our get errors command. So this will display our error message details. And don't forget to right click the text box and go to text box properties and go to the display tab and check the multi-line. So what does the multi-line do? This just means that we don't want the 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 error messages to be only a one sentence. We want it to show as a list and add a line break every time there is an error message. So let's apply a multi-line and click OK. So once that's done, we've already added run validations. We've already added the triggered for the validation. Now we already have the display of the error message. Of course, we don't want this section to be displayed if there are no errors existing. So let's try and hide this section. You have to click the section property and then click new and click formatting, and let's just name this hide. So for the condition, let's state here that if the error message is blank, meaning if there are no errors as a result of our get errors command, then we will be hiding this control by just clicking this hide this control checkbox. So those are the Steps to achieve the new validation rule. First is to add validation rules to the required fields. Second is to add a run validation rule and a stop if error exists action in the submit button. Third is to create a section to display the error details. So once you've done all of that, the result of your form is our current form, our current end form, which is this. And as you can see, if I type here forms designer and click submit, it then remove the error message of that title field. And because it still has errors in the form, the process of submission did not continue. So that's what we are aiming for this run validation feature. So that's it for the lab tree. Hopefully you will be able to use this feature in your form. Thank you. Um,
Okay, thank you, Yasha. And feel free to chat your questions if you have any questions, and we'll try to answer them after the demos. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now for Lab 4. Okay, so just like Kirby and Yasha showed you, for Lab 4, you can do the same, download the package using the course directory form. Just click download here and it will direct you to Hightail to download the package for this lab. Okay, and then for a change, I will show you the end form first to demo what you're going to end up with when you follow the instructions in this lab. So this form is already configured with the DBXL XTP that will allow you to submit to DBXL. Okay, so I will enter some information here. Testing, and I will submit this. Okay, and this debug slider that Kirby showed you earlier will also check on this. Okay, so as you can see, the submit to DBXL command is there, and it ran successfully, and it did return the doc ID for the document that is submitted to DBXL. Okay, so this is submitting to SharePoint and also submitting to DBXL. So for those who want to submit to SQL, you can use DBXL to integrate your InfoPath Forms data to SQL. Okay, so let's check that in our DBXL administration tool. So I have my document type open here, and I will just refresh the Documents tab to check if my form is actually here. Okay, so doc ID is 476. That's right. Yeah, okay, 476. So it's there. And since I have a database mapping configured for this document type, as you can see, it is mapped to a table in my SQL server. Let's refresh my table here. So you see that item is submitted here. So my forms data is actually submitted to SQL. Okay, so basically the prerequisites for this lab is that you need to have DBXL installed. So that is one obvious requirement. If you don't have DBXL yet, you can download that from our website. You can download the trial here. So go to Tools, DBXL, download, free trial download, and just fill up the form here. And once you submit, it will send the installation or installer to you, along with the documentation to follow how you can install DBXL. And if you need assistance, definitely we can schedule to assist you on installing DBXL to your server. So yeah, so we need to have DBXL installed, and then of course DBXL is used to map your forms data to SQL. So you need to have a destination for your forms data. So in this case, I already have a table for my end of day report. So this is that table here. It's just very basic. It's using these columns here that corresponds to the fields in my, oh, don't actually have it open. Okay, so I'll open my, oh, sorry, the starter form. So those columns corresponds to the fields in my main data source here. And then, okay, so you have DBXL, you have your SQL table, and you need to add a new document type to DBXL. So once you install DBXL, you get access to this, we call it DBXL administration tool. And I already have the document type here called EOD report. And so what you're gonna do is just click new configuration and browse to your XSN. And name your XSN without spaces and save. Okay, and I'm not doing that because I already have it here. So once you save your XSN here, it's going to be a doc type called a document type in DBXL. And I've already set up the database mapping here. If you want to learn how to set up the database mapping, I have created a video clip. It's a short video clip that you can watch. So just open the PDF file. It comes with a lab, and watch the how-to. Just click on the link and it will open a clip, short GIF clip, how I added that database mapping. So that's how I added the connection string. And then I'm gonna need to enter the initial catalog there, or database name, and then I selected the table name, and then basically mapped the column names for my table to the field names in my form. Okay, so that's how I did that. And after you have your database mapping configured, you're also going to need the DBXL key, because for security purpose, DBXL requires a key to submit to DBXL. So in the package, I also provided a DBXL key generator XSN. So you can open that in design mode, preview. Oh, and before you preview, you need to change the site here, the server for your DBXL. So you need to know your server name and replace the server name here. And then click preview. Enter the username and query for key, and it will generate a key for that user, and it will look something like this. Okay, so we need that key to add in the DBXL XTP when we configure that XTP in the form later. Okay, so what else you need? You have DBXL, SQL table, database mapping, document type. Oh, and also I added a permission here. So for the user that you generated the key, you need to add that here. And I just click enforce permissions and check these boxes to allow that user to submit to this document type, and click save after modifying the permissions. Okay. So all of those steps are in this document. So we're not going through to show you all of those steps, but you can always go back to these instructions here. But I'm going to show you the part where you will add the XTP to the form. Okay. So this is the starter form, right? Okay. So in the starter form for this lab, I would add the DBXL XTP. So in this case, it's already added under my custom controls, but if it's not yet added in your custom controls, just select template part, browse, and browse to that lab folder and select DBXL XTP. Okay, so I just put my cursor here at the very bottom of the form and select DBXL XTP. And it will display the full instructions. So you just need to follow the instructions. And it's very straightforward actually. So step 1 says to add the XTP to your form. And we've already done that. Next is to add Q rules to your form. And Kirby showed you earlier how to inject your forms with Q rules using FormsViewer. So I already have Q rules here, Qdabra rules there. And step 3 is, so this is where we're going to start. So go to the XTP logic DBXL. So it says here, Q rules temp command, so that XPath. And here where it says change fields, we need to replace the placeholder. Okay, replace the placeholder. Okay, and then we're going to point that to the actual Qdabra rules command field. Okay. The reason why we're, when we create these XCPs, it's always pointing to a placeholder field, because when you create XCPs in InfoPath, it doesn't allow you to inject Q rules in it. So we always do this logic where you can replace the fields over the actual command and result nodes and Q rules. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Selecting result node there. And then step 4 is add a rule in the Qdabra rules finished loading to run trigger the onload form logic. So Qdabra rules finish loading. So at the very end of the rules here, I will add something like run DBXL XTP. Select add, set a fields value, and select the XTP logic DBXL, expand actions. Select the onload field, click OK, and set this to some value. In this case, we're setting it to go. It doesn't necessarily have to be that text, but Yeah, so we're basically telling this field to run the rules here. So as you can see, we have a stopper here, so it stops if the onload field is blank. But since we're setting that field on load, so it recognizes that it has a value, so it will run the rest of the rules here. So next is, where were we? Okay, step 5. So on load that XPath and set DBXL values. Okay, and here's where you're going to enter your DBXL server. So you need to know your DBXL site, and don't forget to include that slash at the end, and enter your DBXL user key here. Okay, so that is step 5. And you can actually skip step 6 because we're not using QueryDB in this form. But if you're using QueryDB, then you can also make use of that. Okay. What else? So step 7 is modify your existing DBXL submit logic to trigger submit. Okay, so we're going to click the submit button and add an action after submitting to library. Say submit to DBXL. And it's very simple. So just set a field value and select the submit field here and set it to that value. So we're basically triggering everything that's in here every time the submit button is clicked. Okay, and then we're going to edit this rule here, which is setting values for DBXL submit. That is the last part here, step 8. And you need to enter your document type. So in DAT, my doc type name is EOD report. So it has to be the same spelling. Case sensitive. Okay. And name, author, and description are optional, but I'm going to set that anyway. The name, author, and description, or did I do that correctly? Okay. Here, okay. Title. Okay, so name, author, and description. You can find it here in your document type. So go to Documents tab. So this is where it's going to store those values. So it's just a reference in DAT. Okay. So once you've configured that, you can remove this section. You don't need to show that to your users, and delete this extra group there. And save your form. Okay, and then re-upload that to FormsViewer, and then you're going to get an end form like this, like I showed you. So it is actually submitting to DBXL because we've configured the XTP in this form. 477. And one other thing that I found really cool about this XTP is that you can actually open an existing form by specifying the doc ID in the URL as parameter. So at the end of this URL, you can append ampersand doc ID equals 477. So that's the doc ID value, right? Hope it works. Yeah, okay. It did work. Okay, so it will load it's actually getting the existing document in DBXL when you specify the doc ID parameter here. So what's actually happening is that in the DBXL XTP, let's go back here. It's actually running this, the form logic in this field. So it's getting the doc ID that's in the parameter, and it's checking if doc ID exists, and it's using the swap DOM with document command and Q rules to get the existing document from DBXL based on the doc ID. So it's really nice because with this feature you can load existing forms even without SharePoint. I've worked with clients who has FormsViewer standalone. They don't have SharePoint at all, and they're just using this format. So this parameter in their SQL Server reporting services to load their documents. So it doesn't have to be SharePoint. It can be a wiki page or something, and you can replace the links with this parameter. Of course, it has to be dynamically queried, right? So you can add that feature by using this DBXL XTP. So do you have any questions for this lab? So I guess not. We'll just continue it with the slides.
All right, so for our day one summary, we've shown you how to add the dynamic thesis XTP, which helps in migrating forms with multiple data connections. Yesha also showed how to configure GetUserProfileByName to retrieve the current user's information like first name and last name and even the user's picture. She also showed how to implement the validation fields where she showed the highlighting of the fields. And lastly, Joanne demoed how you can map your form values to DBXL, which is one of Qdabra's accelerator, which submits form values to SQL or database. So that's our summary for day one.
Oops, okay.
All right, so why FormsViewer? So FormsViewer is a great product. It's the only app out there that will migrate your InfoPath form templates as is. That means you do not need to rebuild them. It also lets you continue your InfoPath investment without because as you've already know, support for InfoPath will end in 2026, and our goal is to help you or help companies using InfoPath to keep their investments. And we're continuously updating this app to provide you more handy features that can help extend your forms. It offers features like making your forms more mobile responsive. It also allows form access to external users, therefore reducing your licensing cost. And it also allows generating PDF copy of your forms. And with FormsViewer, you can also add security to your forms using SMS or two-factor authentication like Authy, and so much more. And we have showed you some of the features today in this training, and we'll show you more in the next days. So if you need help with your existing form projects like migrating Infopath forms, just drop us an email at support@qdabra.com, and we'd be happy to help.
So before we end day one class, we'd like to know your comments, the things that you've learned today, and we'll appreciate if you can share that in the class. So I hope you don't mind if we just go around the table again using the participants list in Zoom. So can we ask Alicia Cooper because she's first in the list? Alicia, are you still there? Oh, okay.
I don't think she was able to make it for the entire thing. So.
All right. So, Benjaline, can you go next?
Hi.
Hello.
My takeaway is that it looks very similar to the Qdabra DBXL application that we currently use, except we have a very old one that because we haven't upgraded for over 10 years. So I am looking forward to once we upgrade next year, only because I think the application that we are using is very dated. So there's obviously a lot more features and functions with FormsViewer, so I am looking forward to it.
Great. Definitely we can assist you with your DBXL or FormsViewer upgrade if you need our assistance. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Benjaline. Next is Emma. Emma, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. I'm sorry if you hear any background noise. The dog's got her toy out.
No
I
problem.
think that the biggest takeaway for me was definitely DBXL and connecting up to a database, because that's what my job is. I'm a database programmer, so that was huge for me, seeing it step by step like that. But other than that, I have to say I really liked the new validation techniques, because that's another huge part of all of our forms. We're really strict with our validation. So I thought that looked great, and it was really easy to follow. So I can see us implementing that probably right away with what we have in test. So
Thank you. Glad that you found it really helpful. Okay, so next is Nicole.
Hi. Actually,
Hello.
I think all the techniques are going to be used in our forms. We actually have implemented each one of these in the forms that we're going to release later this month. So it was really nice to get a refresher and a little more detail. I think we're most excited about the DBXL because we are finding that the more forms that we are creating, the more often the users are wanting to connect to databases. So it's going to be very useful for us.
Okay. Yeah, glad to know that. And Richard?
Yeah, hi. I was not aware about the DBXL. We're sort of a smaller organization. We use SharePoint, but so it's nice to know that that feature's there if we ever need it in the future. I will be, going over the labs for the dynamic DCs and the XDP validation. I noticed that there's an update to the dynamic DC's XML file from what I was previously using. Because there were some extra fields in the XDP logic So that's good to know. So I'll just be going over those labs again to see if anything's been updated or changed. So yeah.
Thank you. So regarding your email earlier before the training, I noticed that you said that even when you open a blank form, those two instances of the DBXL.
Right. I didn't realize I had it installed already, and I wasn't familiar with how that interacted. But so yeah, it was just because I had it installed already. And
Right. Yeah. So I assume that it was already installed. So, thank you for checking that out and noticing the update with the XML. So just make sure that you're using the latest XTP that we provided in the lab. Thank you, Richard, for that point. Okay, next is Shane.
I was great class today. I agree with everybody in the chat. Thanks for staying up late and running this class. It was great. I think the big thing that was new to me that I hadn't considered was the bringing the picture in from the user profile to customize the forms a little bit more. And I'll be using that in forms that I'm doing in the future. That was really neat.
Glad you like that. Yeah. So thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate you. And yeah, so we're going to have other cool features for tomorrow. I think it's all, yeah, it's also in the slide. So tomorrow we're going to show you how to make your forms look modern. So it's more on the design part. So we're going to show you how to make your forms responsive, how to make them, I hope we can add a little bit of mobile techniques tomorrow. And then we're also going to show you how to add the floating labels. If you've watched our recent webinars, we've webinared this before. And the flex task pane, we are now using a different technique for displaying a task pane in the form. So just want to show you a quick preview here before we end the class. Yeah, so this is what we're gonna learn tomorrow, how to do this flexible task pane that can be toggled. Yeah, so it's really cool. I hope you can join tomorrow's class again. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. We will make the recordings available later in YouTube. And you can always download the lab packages using the course directory form and follow the instructions whenever you have free time. Thank you so much again for joining. Thanks everyone. And thank you Kirby and Yesha for all the demos and for all your help. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.